For people who don't know yet, how do you describe what cybersecurity auditing technologies does and who you're helping?
So, cybersecurity auditing technologies, otherwise known as CAT, is basically helping organizations on two different ways. One is it's a business tool. It's a SaaS-based tool that are primarily targeted at CEOs and business owners. So a lot of SMEs that don't generally have, they may or may not have government required auditing requirements, but it takes in cybersecurity, IT, compliance, cybersecurity insurance, all of these different items and assigns calculations or performs calculations and relates that in language, if you will, that the CEO can understand. And it gives them an idea of their financial liability, not just a risk score that an IT person or a compliance person may assign to it. So it takes all of these, and then here in the U.S., there's a effort amongst the 50 states, some have already passed them, digital safe harbor laws. So basically, to reduce risk to the consumer, it incentivizes organizations to implement reasonable cybersecurity. And that's taken into account as well as part of the calculations, so that it gives the owner or the CEO or the board of directors an idea. If you don't fix this vulnerability, it could cost you this much money. So it helps them.
That's really
It
interesting.
helps them plan strategically when they're budgeting, because IT generally doesn't have control over their own budget. It's that C-level, that CEO, that board that assigns that. So it puts it in language that they can understand. And then also it helps them communicate back to the organizations, whether it be the CFO or the IT administrator, CIO, that this is what I mean when I say this.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting, Dale. That's exactly the type of tool that your SMBs need to address the never-ending threats of cybersecurity and compliance issues and that. How are you helping plug the gaps that are being identified as part of that process?
The real accountability gap isn't that executive suite. So cyber decisions live and die with the people who control the budgets. Okay.
Yeah.
So many times CEOs and boards treat cyber directly as a technical issue when it's really a business risk. That can leave the organization very blind at the top. And instead of leading when there's an incident or a breach, executives have a tendency to scramble for a solution or to understand what's going on. So until CEOs and senior leadership own cyber risk, the way that they own financial risk, companies will keep getting caught flat-footed, so to speak. So that's how we identify that gap, accountability gap, and help close it with this tool and with our other services, which are help to mitigate that, such as a trusted advisor for those organizations.
Okay, amazing. Cybersecurity challenges for SMBs, from your perspective, what are the biggest risks smaller organizations are underestimating right now?
What they're underestimating is lack of understanding, lack of awareness across the board, across the organization, what every individual's role is within cybersecurity. So it's about education. It's about understanding that just because you have a policy for something doesn't mean that you're secure. You have to you have to have a technical control in place to enforce an administrative control such as a policy. And so until people understand that, it doesn't matter if it's AI, if it's phishing, whatever the case may be, everyone has to understand their fundamental role in protecting the organization and the organization's data.
Amazing. Yeah, really good insight there, Dale. Talk to me about cyber insurance and your thoughts on that. Now, you've spoken about your tool being a really useful insight into for insurers to understand, or for CEOs to get an understanding around insurance requirements and become compliant, and what that's going to cost and how to become more insurable. And your tool's going to help small businesses get there and set that roadmap. Insurance in the US right now or cyber insurance is a very fast growing industry, very much taking off. Premiums are rising, though. Requirements are getting stricter from the insurers, and they're also asking much tougher questions than they were 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see cyber insurance shaping the way companies are approaching their security strategy these days?
A couple of different ways. One way is because here in the U.S., there's no standard for cybersecurity insurance, at least the questionnaires. Some may have one-pagers, some may have nine-pagers. But what when executive leadership is considering cybersecurity insurance, again, it's that translation. They don't always understand how their people are answering the questions. Here in the U.S., even though people say they have cybersecurity insurance, there's different versions. There's fraud, there's criminal. It's all related to BCDR. What are you actually insuring? What's in your policy? Because a lot of them don't understand when you answer the questions, they're generally point in time. That doesn't ask the maturity level of your program. It says, do you have BCDR, backup, business continuity, disaster recovery? Do you do security awareness training? Do you have role-based security awareness training? And they click yes, it's a checkbox. But what they don't understand is 6 months, a year down the road, if they have an incident and it goes to be investigated, just like with any insurance policy, if you're not doing something, specifically how you answered it that 1 year or somebody answered, you're going to get denied. As an example, a few years ago, I was contacted by a cybersecurity insurance company, a large one. They had a group that was here locally they had about a $10 million policy. It was a manufacturing company. And they said, hey, we want you to help do the forensics on this, your company. I said, okay, let me meet with them. So we got the appropriate NDAs in place. And I got on the phone with them. And not only had they waited 7 or 8 months to report the incident, or at least apply for the claim, instead of capturing everything or following a formal incident response plan, which they said they had when they put their questionnaire in, as a ransomware attack, they wiped everything. There were no logs. They wiped every server. They wiped every laptop, every desktop, even their Exchange servers, because they were on-prem, to get back to full production as quickly as possible. So there was no investigation. Well, they ended up having a loss of about $15 million because they were down 2 to 3 weeks. And their claim was denied. And so it's cybersecurity insurance. When you answer the questionnaire, you have to be able to prove that you're doing this, not just point in time, but over time. So if your CFO is filling out your cyber insurance policy and they don't understand the language of what they're committing to, then your company or your organization is at a very high risk.
Yeah.
So,
and again, I mean, that's coming down to awareness and education at that C-suite level, because if the conversation has not been had properly between your IT guys and your security guys and the CFO, who typically deals with insurance, if there's miscommunication there or no communication, then these are the problems that companies are going to get into, aren't they?
Right. And SMEs and SMBs have the same problems that a lot of large enterprises have, the silo effect when it comes to organizations.
Yeah.
Your CLO speaks legalese. Your CFO speaks finance. Your IT director or your CIO speaks geek. So you have all those that they may have their regular staff meetings or their senior leadership meetings, but they're not speaking the same language. And until organizations get on that same page and break down the siloed language barrier, is not going to help. And every country, every region has their own business culture. So when you add in some areas, you have that business culture silo that's in effect, then that makes it even more problematic. So that's where that C-suite, that CEO, when they're building their leadership teams, the CEO has to understand how everybody speaks and what they mean.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Dale, you've mentioned security awareness and that being increasingly demanded now by cyber insurers and a lot of the frameworks out there. Tools and tech are super important. So are the policies, but people remain the weak link.
Mhm.
And this is now becoming increasingly more obvious to the SMB space. What's one behavior you wish every business user would change tomorrow?
Ownership. And what I mean by that is one of the things I've done in trying to design security awareness programs for my customers is you have to have the buy-in from the end user. So if you can relate how that end user treats the organization's data and equipment to if it's their own. So, the importance of protecting your own financial data on your own systems, you have MFA on your phone, on your banking apps. Yeah. Well, then too many times people, when it gets on their work email or their work systems, they try to bypass that. So when we're doing security awareness training, we try to relate, okay, treat this as you treat your own home network. Do you change the default passwords on your wireless router or on your modem? Do you have it segregated so that you have a guest Wi-Fi at home? So if we relate to how they reduce the risk of their own stuff on their own data, then that helps translate to what they can do for the organization.
Yeah, I love that, Dale. It's something that we very much try and build into the language and the communication that we actually use as well. And it's as personal as we can make it, the more effective it is. It's all about changing behavior. It's about educating people about the threats out there. If we can get them to adopt those behaviors at home, they'll bring those good, secure behaviors into the workplace and everyone's a winner. Yeah, that ownership piece is super important, really interesting. Dale, when it comes to veterans in cyber, from the UK cyber industry and certainly in the US industry, it's ever increasing now. There's a strong pipeline of vets entering the cybersecurity industry. What advice would you give to service members who are looking to transition into cybersecurity right now?
Keep your same mindset. Cybersecurity, the zero trust, defense in depth, whichever methodology you're looking at, is the same thing if you're setting up a defensive. You're looking for your ingress and egress points. You're trying to plug the holes. You're trying to protect your tactical operations center. You have your FOPs, your forward operating posts. You're trying to do that. It's the same thing with cybersecurity. So you're putting your defenses in, your IDS, your SIM technology, your endpoint protection, honeypots maybe out front. You're doing all of this together. It's the same mindset with the security, with the military. So the same mindset, see how that applies in the cybersecurity universe. Because cybersecurity has become, even though the term's been around since the 80s, it didn't hit the mainstream, at least here in the US, until an executive order back during the Obama administration. And so cybersecurity has become a catch-all for information assurance and data security. So when they're transitioning, what is their strong points? So in cybersecurity, we need project managers that understand cybersecurity. So how do you translate that if you're a project manager in the military behind the lines, or if you're setting up things at your forward post? How do you set that up? You apply that to cybersecurity. Recommend that anybody thinking about cybersecurity start at the basics. Get your experience understanding of IT, not just cybersecurity, but IT. In the US, a big thing is the Security Plus from a security basics. You start there and then again, apply the same mindset you did when you were in the military. In cybersecurity, someone told me a long time ago, and it stuck with me, something is either secure or it's not. There's not really a gray area. And a lot of times in the military, it's the same way. It's not until you get to the senior leadership positions where you're dealing with the politics that those gray areas come in. But as a practitioner, it's either secure or it's not.
Yeah, I love that. Dale, looking forward, what's one big security challenge or trend do you think will define the next 12 to 18 months that you guys are looking at, planning for, trying to understand right now?
It's, I guess, the buzzword of the moment of the last couple of years is AI. How does that evolve? With the complexity of the attacks, ever changing, and attack vectors that are coming on, the attacks are becoming more complex until we get into a certain level of quantum cryptography, where we bring in the ability to unencrypt, making it still easier to unencrypt. Yeah. Nation states are making a lot of progress. You have, over the last couple of years, the scalability of quantum computers has gone down, so it makes it easier to own and more mobile. Yeah. That's just going to speed up AI. As long as it does more, and just educating people about AI and how it, again, applies to them and their organizations, that's going to be huge. When ChatGPT first launched, I know one of the big ones was a group, I think it was one of the larger providers in the world. I'm not going to say which organization, but they do a lot of cell phones and TVs. Some of their developers uploaded some of their source code for some of their new devices into ChatGPT without realizing they were giving authorization for the LLM to learn from it.
Yeah.
Doing stuff like that, understanding what the risk is of AI with the LLMs and the new things, the SLMs, the small language models that are coming out, and people understanding that we're still in the crawling, close to walking space of AI. If you go by, I don't know if you're familiar with Moore's Law, it goes back to
Yes.
1960s, that the speed of the transistors would double every 2 years. In technology now, if you apply the same type of thought process to Moore's Law, for modern times, it's technology doubles in speed every 6 months. Yeah. And so it's only going to get exponentially faster with the advancements of AI. Depending on who you ask, there's 5 to 7 levels of AI, and most agree, though, that we're in stage 2 or 3. So how fast do we get to that? Not just the autonomous, and decision-making versions beyond what the Chinese are doing, beyond what Elon Musk's companies are doing. The average user doesn't understand that. They're just wowed by the newest tool, but they don't understand the implications, the long-term risk of what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And companies are sprinting headfirst into adopting this and using this as much as they can to be able to compete and to be able to keep that edge and to be able to not get left behind and not miss out. But a lot of them have got their blinkers on when it comes to the threats and the risks of using these large models and blindly trusting it and dumping business data into it. That's not even to speak of the deep fake technologies that are out there being used for social engineering. You've spoken about possibly see the end of encryption. It's a very interesting time for sure with the AI environment right now. And I think a lot more learning and paying attention to that is going to be needed, Dale.
Yeah, and to add on to that, historically, business decision-making, from what I understand, and what I go by, is you have operational planning, which is your day-to-day, your tactical, which might be a couple of months out, maybe up to a year, and then strategic planning, 1 to 3 to 5 years out. Because of the speed of AI development and how technology is moving, that strategic window is shorter. So leadership has to be more agile when they're budgeting. They have to have a general fund that they can draw on for the next new threat that might emerge in between budget cycles, because you can't wait another year to come up with a solution or fund a solution. So again, that comes down to the C-level. And too many times with SMEs, a lot of times they're worried about the next payroll period. They're worried about the next quarter. So again, that comes down to them accepting risk that they're not aware of, that they don't really understand, and it makes it harder to fund those efforts. So a lot of times leadership has to think outside the box. And again, I see more in the future that these types of businesses are going to have some type of not just cybersecurity insurance, but some type of incident response fund, if you will, or line item in their budget. This what if that they can't fully justify from a business expense purpose. It just has to sit there just in case. Because
And do you think that's necessary, Dale, over and above their cyber liability insurance?
oh, definitely, because the insurance itself, like I said earlier, that if you're not doing exactly what you were saying on that point in time questionnaire, more than likely that's going to get denied. And when you look at 30%, approximately 30% of CEOs are fired after an incident comes out. You look at that, so you have the changing leadership, and they may have a different strategy when the new one comes on as how they deal with cyber insurance. So they need to have something there that they can touch outside of cyber insurance. It might be some type of, again, it's some type of almost like general fund that's only a break glass, if you will, like break glass accounts in IT is there just in case. MSPs, there's a new product here in the US that's going around. It's not cybersecurity insurance. It's like a liability insurance, if you will, where they pay a few dollars a month extra per seat to be covered. They have that way they can get several $1,000s short notice if they before the incident is fully investigated, but they can get several $1,000s to help start dealing with it. Bring on a forensics person, maybe able to bring on, through the MSP, somebody after the attack is mitigated for that long-term recovery, for the reputational brand damage that may happen to the brand. They may have to have money to engage a public relations person that they don't have on staff, or an attorney, a cyber attorney. And that's something you might take 6-8 months to get a insurance settlement to cover. So you have to have something there to be able to do that, to keep them afloat. Because I know I think it was last year, a study out of the UK said that a very large percentage of SMEs that have a breach are out of business within 6 months.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. And your smaller businesses, a lot of the time, have got one crack at the whip. They've got one go at it, and they either survive or they never open their doors again. So, it's a scary time right now. And, the SMBs are super vulnerable to it. Dale, it's been great chatting. Before I let you go, where can people find you, connect with you online, and learn more about CAT?
On LinkedIn. Our CAT website is currently, there's a website up, it's cybersecurityauditingtechnologies.com, but it is in the process of being updated. But LinkedIn is the best area, me personally, and also with the website, or with the company itself. That's the best way, and always open to have discussions. And just one thing before I go is I'd like to reference again the reasonable cybersecurity. If more businesses start implementing, following a recognized framework, whether it be, like you said, ISO or the Center for Internet Security, CIS. In the U.S., we have Secure Controls Framework, SCF, NIST standards. Follow a framework, implement the framework, and then continuously improve. And there are some specifically for SMEs, the controls that apply if you have specific size organizations. So if you do that, you're doing the basic hygiene. You can show you're doing the basics. Then that helps out, especially in some states here in the U.S., when it comes to legal liability. So like I said, we call it digital safe harbor laws. But a reasonable cybersecurity plan will help reduce the risk. And I'm always open to talk about that as well. So again, what we talked about earlier, Dan, and what your company does, it's about awareness. About spreading that awareness, being an evangelist, and being open to discussions, and working with people who are open to hearing things they generally don't like to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Risk management and spending money on it is something a lot of small businesses don't want to hear about.
I mean, if leadership can understand how to turn the cost of cybersecurity they don't always understand. They think of it as a cost center. Again, they're spending money. But if they frame it as a return on investment, you have more trust from your customers, helps you get better contracts, reduces that cybersecurity premium. So if you look at it as an investment and not a cost center from a leadership perspective, then that helps. And then when you have proper cybersecurity leadership.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Dale, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you joining us on the podcast today. You've been listening to the Go Phish podcast. Catch you all next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.